Deep inside the human body, the Yersinia pestis bacterium divides at an exponential rate. Before the host even shows symptoms, the pathogen multiplies aggressively, consuming healthy cells to sustain its own rapid replication. In the year 540 AD, the human hosts for this bacteria lived under a rigid geopolitical binary. The Mediterranean basin and the Middle East were almost entirely controlled by two states, the Roman and the Persian empires. This map shows the layout of those empires on the eve of the Justinianic plague. In 541 AD, the disease emerged in Egypt. It then radiates outward, systematically infiltrating the dense population centers of both Roman and Persian territories. The plunging line graph here illustrates the severity of the demographic collapse. When the infection reached Constantinople, imperial officials recorded mortality rates peaking at 10,000 deaths in a single day. This massive loss of human life translated immediately to agricultural failure. Fields were abruptly stripped of their farmers. Across the countryside, crops were left to rot in the dirt, and contemporary accounts describe entire towns left abandoned, with the doors to homes hanging wide open. Unharvested fields meant an immediate cessation of tax revenue. Both empires plunged into a chronic economic depression as their imperial treasuries quickly ran dry. With their populations decimated and their agrarian economies halted, the Roman and Persian states were effectively neutralized. The dual collapse hollowed out their territorial authority, leaving an immense geopolitical vacuum across the region. While the plague had dismantled the old Mediterranean order, it hadn't destroyed the appetite for Eastern goods. With the old empires too weak to maintain their maritime infrastructure, trade was forced toward the northern frontier, a place the settled world had viewed with profound suspicion for centuries. This suspicion was rooted in a psychological geography that bifurcated the globe into two distinct spheres. Iran represented the order and civilization of the empires, while Tehran was the realm of chaos, inhabited by the nomadic groups of the deep steppe. This cultural dread is codified across the era's literature. Christian, Jewish, and Islamic texts all echo the same fear of the frontier, a terror later corroborated by diplomats like Ibn Fadlan, who traveled into the deep steppe and recorded the alien customs of its inhabitants. But the plague had emptied the treasuries. The Mediterranean economy was paralyzed. To secure the resources necessary for survival, merchants had to push past this profound xenophobia and physically cross into the very territories they feared most. The existing maritime infrastructure in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea was failing. To meet the persistent demand for Eastern luxuries, traders began organizing highly complex, dangerous overland expeditions to bypass the oceans entirely. They were moving deep into India and China to extract low-volume, high-value goods, musk, aloe wood, camphor, and rare spices like cinnamon. This map traces the new overland arteries. Multi-ethnic merchant cohorts routed caravans away from the sea, cutting through Khazaria and Balkh to the east. Notice how traditional coastal routes are bypassed. Eurasian exchange shifted decisively into the northern steppes and Central Asia. By physically relocating the pathways of international trade, the economic center of gravity migrated away from the Mediterranean basin, landing squarely in the heart of the expanding Islamic empire. The Caspian Sea was the critical geographic bottleneck for overland traffic between Europe and Asia. Just south sits Jurgen. Jurgen processed these goods, acting as a mandatory administrative clearinghouse where customs duties were levied on passing caravans. Taxed goods were then routed inland to Ray. Ray became the collection point for an immense variety of physical wealth. Silks from China, furs from the Caucasus, and metals from Khazaria all converged in its markets. The sheer concentration of capital was so dense that a 10th century Arabic geographer explicitly labeled Ray the Emporial of the world. The true innovation of the Islamic Empire was administrative. Military conquest acquired the territory, but bureaucratic monopolization, controlling and taxing the specific geographic choke points of a global supply chain, is what generated the wealth. This vintage photograph of an Egyptian marketplace captures local industry. Under Islamic administration, cities like Tunis developed highly specialized lucrative manufacturing sectors. Tunis produced fine textiles. The quality of the weave, with dyes, and the materials were so superior that they became the ultimate status symbol across Eurasia. The demand was absolute. According to the Persian traveler Nasiri Khusrau, the Byzantine emperor sent a message to the Sultan of Egypt offering to surrender 100 of his own cities in exchange for control of Tinnis alone. That concentrated industrial value pulled foreign capital directly out of Europe. Fiercely competitive Italian city-states, Venice, Amalfi, and Genoa, sent their merchants to Egypt, eagerly offloading their silver to secure access to these markets. This dynamic inverted the old geopolitical hierarchy. The former superpowers of the Mediterranean were reduced to desperate customers, draining their own treasuries to buy goods from the new center of the world. This Hereford Mappamundi corrects the myth of a Eurocentric Middle Ages. European powers were nowhere near the center. States like the Rus operated on the extreme fringes of this map. Their survival hinged entirely on plugging into supply chains controlled by the Islamic administration. Global hegemony is rarely a matter of simple military conquest. As the rise of the Islamic network proves, long-term dominance belongs to the architects who successfully engineer, control, and tax the underlying flow of world trade.